Hey, it's Mr. Jackson here. I never thought it would come to this. My own son mocked and ditched me at a foreign airport, left me stranded with nothing. But what happened next? The cops showed up, handing him an eviction notice. This wasn't just a fight over a house. It was a battle for my dignity, my life, and you won't believe what my son did after that. Want to know what happened next? Stick around, because this story isn't over. It's just getting started. I sit there, at the gate of a foreign airport, my fingers nervously drumming against my phone. The familiar buzz of my heartbeat echoes in my ears as I scroll through the messages, once again checking for any word from my son. It's been over an hour now, and still no sign of him. I glance around, the bustling crowd moving past me in a blur. The foreign language being spoken sounds more like a blur than a conversation to my ears. The terminal is stark, bright, almost too clean. It doesn't feel like a place where I belong. My mind drifts back to when he promised he'd be here, that he'd pick me up. I'll be there, Dad. Don't worry. I've got you. A promise made, but it feels like a distant memory now, a broken one at that. I check the time again. It's been over 30 minutes past when he was supposed to be here. I tap my phone screen, hoping for a message, but nothing. The frustration builds, and for a second, I almost feel like I'm losing control. I don't get anxious. That's not me. I've lived through too much to be shaken by something like this. But, hell, this is different. This is him, my son, the one I raised. There's a tightening in my chest. As I sit there, I can't help but think of the years gone by, the moments we shared when he was younger. Back then, it was different. He used to run to me, smile with that uncontainable joy only children could have. But as he grew, something shifted. It was as if he was slowly slipping away from me. Now, he doesn't even have the decency to show up on time, let alone offer an explanation. The thought stings deeper than I care to admit, but I push it aside. There's no use dwelling on what's beyond my control. Another half hour goes by. People come and go. My legs are starting to ache from the weight of the waiting. Still no message, no phone call. Then, just as I begin to lose hope, I see him. He walks into the terminal, his gait purposeful but slow, as if he's in no hurry to meet me. My son. The man who, just a few years ago, couldn't get enough of me. Now, he's like a stranger. He glances at his watch as he nears me, his eyes lingering on my tired face for a brief second before he dismisses it. He doesn't smile, doesn't ask how my flight was. Instead, he starts talking, and the words he uses hit harder than I expected. You're always so slow, Dad. Can't you keep up? His voice is laced with condescension, cutting through the air like a blade. Maybe you should just stay home next time. This isn't a vacation for old men like you. I swallow the rising lump in my throat. I want to respond, want to say something, anything, but the words get caught in my throat. Instead, I nod, forcing a tight smile, trying not to let the humiliation take root. Yeah, Dad, you're just too old for this. I had to rush just to make it on time, he continues, his tone dripping with mockery. I feel a sharp pang of rage, something deep within that I've ignored for too long. This isn't the first time he's done this to me. It's become a pattern, a broken record of insults, dismissals, and a total disregard for everything I've done for him. But instead of snapping, I keep my lips sealed. I've learned over the years that sometimes silence speaks louder than anything I could say. Then, as if his words weren't enough, he looks at me and says it. I've got some business to handle, Dad. Wait for me here, all right? I'll be back soon. And just like that, without another glance, he walks away. Leaves me sitting there, stunned and alone. I sit there for what feels like an eternity, waiting for him to come back, to explain. But nothing happens. The hours drag on, and I begin to realize something. Something cold, cruel, and unforgiving. He's left me here, alone, with no money, no phone charger, no clear way of getting to the next stop on my journey. The weight of his abandonment sinks in, a bitter, gnawing realization that I've been discarded once again. The anger, the hurt, it all floods back. But more than that, I feel something else stirring deep within me. It's a feeling I haven't had in a long time. Strength. I'm not the man I used to be. The man who took everything quietly. The man who let people walk all over him. That man is gone. I sit up straighter, wiping the sweat from my brow. The air around me feels thicker now, charged with something new determination. Just as I'm beginning to gather my thoughts, my phone rings. I glance at the screen. It's him. I answer, my heart pounding in my chest. Good luck getting home, old man. I won't be back for you, he says before hanging up. I stare at the phone, the words echoing in my ears. The final blow. But instead of feeling defeated, something changes. My shoulders straighten. I don't know what happens next, but I'm done. I won't let him know. I won't let anyone disrespect me again. As I sit in the terminal, the realization of what needs to be done forms clearly in my mind. I will stand up. I will fight for what's right. This isn't over. I sat there, the weight of abandonment pressing down on me harder than the cold metal seats beneath me. The buzz of travelers and their hurried footsteps echoed in my ears, but it was as if I were in a different world entirely. They were moving fast, catching flights, catching trains, going places. And then there was me still, frozen in the moment, alone. I glanced at my phone again, but the screen remained unchanged. No message, no call. Just an empty reminder that I had been forgotten. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the noise of the airport wash over me. The voices, the movement, the sounds of boarding calls, all of it felt like a distant hum. In this sea of people, I felt invisible, as if I didn't belong here at all. And the one person who should have been here, my son, was nowhere to be found. I thought back to the years I spent raising him, the sacrifices I made, the late nights working to give him a better life. How many times did I put aside my own needs for his? I watched him graduate, beaming with pride as he stood there, shaking the hand of his future. I made sure he didn't want for anything. But somewhere along the way, he stopped caring. He became the very thing I never wanted him to be: selfish, detached. A voice cracked through my thoughts. My son's name flashed on the screen of my phone. I hesitated, but then I answered. "What's up, Dad?" His voice was distant, barely even an ounce of warmth behind it. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been waiting here for hours." "Yeah, sorry about that. Got caught up with some things. Look, I'm gonna be busy for the next couple of days. I'll send you some money." "Don't worry about it," he replied, his words clipped and empty. There was no real concern, no care in his voice. Just a hollow promise that didn't even feel like a promise. I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. The words I wanted to say wouldn't come out. I had spent too many years silencing myself in the name of being the good father, the understanding one. But something inside me was shifting. It was as if I were a ticking clock, wound too tight, waiting for the right moment to explode. "All right then," I said, the words coming out cooler than I felt. "Take care." Before I could hang up, he added, "I'll be in touch. Just don't expect too much, okay?" The call ended, but the damage was done. His coldness had hit me like a slap across the face. It wasn't the first time, but it felt worse, somehow, as if all the years I spent giving him everything had just been thrown away. I stood up, slowly, my hands trembling slightly as I looked around the airport. The place seemed even more unfamiliar now, almost hostile. I grabbed my bag, my mind still reeling from the conversation. But as I walked to the nearest bench, something caught my eye. A small envelope slid under the door of the terminal's side exit. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers trembling, and saw that it was from his lawyer. Inside the envelope was a legal document. My heart skipped a beat as I scanned the words on the page. "Your son, Jonathan Jackson, is in the process of taking possession of the property at address. The reason cited for this action is Mr. S. Jackson's inability to manage his finances adequately." I couldn't breathe. I stumbled back, the document falling from my hand as I sat down hard on the nearest bench. It felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. His lawyer was officially trying to take my house from me. My son, the one I had done everything for, was using my age and my so-called inability to steal everything I had worked for. The rage that bubbled inside me threatened to break loose. I gripped the edges of the bench, knuckles white. How could he do this? After everything? A deep, cold fury filled me. How had I not seen this coming? It all made sense now, the way he'd been dismissing me, belittling me, taking more and more from me while offering nothing in return. He didn't care about me. He only cared about what he could get from me. I stood up again, this time with more purpose. I reached into my pocket for my phone and dialed my lawyer. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Mr. Jackson?" he said, his voice a bit surprised. "What's the matter?" "The bastard's trying to take my house," I said, my voice a low growl. "He's using my age against me. It's time we fought back." "I'll get on it right away," my lawyer replied, calm and collected, though I could tell he understood the gravity of the situation. I ended the call, but the silence that followed didn't feel empty anymore. There was a fire in me now, a determination that had been smoldering for years, ready to burn through all the lies and the betrayal. I had been passive for too long. I would not let my son take what was mine. Not now. Not ever. I sat in the living room, the silence of my house settling around me like a heavy fog. It was odd. This was the home I had built, the place I had poured my years into, the walls that had seen the rise and fall of my family. And yet, in this moment, it felt alien. My son's betrayal echoed in the stillness, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was as cold and unwelcoming as the world he had left me in. I hadn't even bothered to turn on the lights. There was no need. The faint light from the window was enough to show me the old armchair where I used to sit with my son, the familiar pictures on the walls, and the dust collecting on the shelves. A part of me wanted to scream, to punch the wall, to throw everything in sight. But the other part, the part that had carried me through my life, told me to hold on, to breathe. The memories were too much, and I found myself thinking back to the years I spent providing for him. How many hours had I worked? How many jobs did I take, just to make sure he had everything he wanted? The sacrifices. I couldn't even count them all. And now here I was, abandoned, betrayed by the very son I had raised. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. For so long I had kept quiet, held my tongue, let him walk all over me. But now, something inside me was changing. The sadness was still there, lingering, but it was being replaced by something sharper, something more dangerous. It was time to take back control, to stand up for myself. Just then, my phone rang. I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. Jonathan. I almost didn't answer, but I did. I had to. "Yeah, Dad?" His voice was cold, distant, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience to him. "Where are you?" I asked, keeping my tone steady, though inside, I was seething. "I've been sitting here all day, waiting. Sorry, I got caught up with work. Look, I've got some things to take care of." "I'll send you some money later," he said, dismissing me like I was just another task on his to-do list. There was no warmth, no concern, just a transactional response. I tried to keep my composure, but I could feel the rage building. How had it come to this? How had my own son turned into someone who couldn't even offer the bare minimum of respect? "All right then," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "I'll manage." The conversation ended with a click, and I was left staring at the phone, my hand shaking in my lap. For years, I had let him treat me this way, telling myself that I had to keep peace, that he would come around. But there was no coming around. This was who he had become, and it wasn't going to change. As I sat there, still digesting the conversation, I noticed something on the floor. An envelope, slipped under the door. It had my name on it. I reached down to pick it up, my fingers still trembling. Inside was a legal document from Jonathan's lawyer. My heart sank as I read the words on the page. "Your son, Jonathan Jackson, is in the process of taking possession of your property, citing your inability to manage finances as the reason." The words blurred for a moment, the weight of them crashing into me like a ton of bricks. My son was trying to take my home from me, the home I had worked my entire life to build, the home I had sacrificed so much for. And now, he was using my age, my so-called failure, to take it away from me. I felt my stomach drop. I was shaking now, but not from fear, no. This was something else. This was rage. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't even comprehend. How could he? After everything I had done for him, he was using the law to strip me of my last bit of dignity? I stood up, my hands trembling as I set the document on the coffee table. For the first time in years, I felt the heat of anger flood through me. Not the passive anger I had buried all this time, but something that burned hot and fierce. I picked up my phone again, my fingers moving quickly as I dialed my lawyer's number. It rang a few times before he picked up. "Mr. Jackson, what can I do for you?" His voice sounded calm, but I could hear the concern in it. "You need to get over here. Now," I said, my voice gruff. "It's time to stop playing nice." The lawyer's voice softened. "I'll be there soon. Don't do anything until we talk." I hung up the phone, staring at the legal papers in front of me. The betrayal stung, but it was nothing compared to the fire that now burned within me. I had been passive for too long. I was done. This was the moment I took back what was mine. An hour later, my lawyer arrived, his face grim as he stepped through the door. We sat down at the kitchen table, and he spread out the legal documents in front of me. "We're looking at a fight here," he said, his voice low. "This isn't going to be easy, Mr. Jackson. Your son's lawyer is good. But don't worry, we'll fight this." I nodded, but inside, I was feeling something else. Something more than just hope. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about reclaiming my life. About showing my son that I wasn't the man he thought I was. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. I was going to take back control. The conversation with my lawyer ended with him offering reassurance, but the fire in my chest wouldn't die down. I wasn't afraid. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was determined. The door shut behind him, and I stood up, feeling the weight of the decision I'd just made. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. Ready to fight back, and I would. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of papers on the coffee table. I sat there, the weight of the legal battle pressing down on me. The house, which had once been full of life, now felt cold, as if it too was aware of the storm brewing in my heart. The family photos on the wall, pictures of days long gone, seemed like relics of a different life. I could almost hear the laughter that once filled these walls, but it was all gone now, replaced by the harsh reality of betrayal. I ran my hand over the papers on the table. The legal documents were a constant reminder of what my son had done to me. Each page felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of the man I had raised, the one who was now trying to take everything from me. How had it come to this? How had I ended up here, fighting my own flesh and blood with nothing but the remnants of what should have been a family? The anger inside me was growing, but so was something else: determination. For too long I had been passive, trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep the peace. But that peace had been shattered. There was no going back. I had to fight, not just for the house, but for my dignity, my sense of self-worth. The years of neglect, the lies, the manipulation, I wouldn't let it go any longer. The phone call came in the middle of my thoughts. I almost didn't answer, but I knew who it was. My lawyer. "Mr. Jackson." His voice was steady, but I could hear the weight of the situation in his tone. "The first court date has been set." The reality of it hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't some abstract legal issue anymore. This was real. This was happening. I was about to go to war, not just against my son, but against the system, against a world that had been indifferent to my struggles for far too long. I could feel my heart race. "You're going to have to be ready," he continued. "This is going to be a long battle." I took a deep breath. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Nothing about this situation had been easy. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. I had lived my life with integrity. I had worked hard, sacrificed for my son, and now he was trying to take everything from me. I wasn't going to let him. I couldn't. "All right," I said, my voice firm. "I'm ready." After the call, I sat there, in the silence of the room. The walls seemed to close in on me. The weight of what was to come hung heavy in the air. But something had shifted. The man I had been, the one who had let things slide, who had hoped for change, was gone. In his place was someone who was ready to fight. The fear was still there, gnawing at the edges, but it was buried beneath a fierce resolve. I needed to talk to my family. I needed their support. I reached out to my brother, hoping for some kind of solidarity. Surely, after everything that had happened, they would stand by me. But when I called him, the response I got was nothing short of cold. He listened for a moment, then sighed. "Look, Jack," he said, his voice dismissive, "maybe you should just let it go. It's not worth the fight." I could feel the anger rising in me again. Let it go? Let my son take my home? Let him strip away everything I had worked for? And what? I shot back, my voice trembling with emotion. Just sit here and let him walk all over me? Let him take everything? No. I'm done letting people walk all over me. But my brother was already done with the conversation. He offered no support, no sympathy. Just the same cold indifference that had come from everyone else. It was as if I wasn't even worth fighting for. The coldness of my family cut deeper than I expected. It was bad enough that my son had betrayed me, but to have my own blood turn their backs on me, that hurt more than anything. I felt like an outsider in my own family, but it also made me realize something. I was alone in this fight, but I wasn't weak. I would fight for what was mine, even if I had to do it alone. The next morning, the letter arrived. I could tell by the stiff envelope that it was from my son. The weight of it in my hands felt like a final blow. I tore it open and read the words, each sentence a reminder of the distance between us. "In order to avoid further escalation, I'm offering a settlement. I will pay you a sum of money for the house and consider the matter closed." The offer was laughable. A mere pittance, a financial bribe to sweep everything under the rug. The cold, detached way it was worded made it clear that he saw this entire situation as nothing more than a business transaction. He didn't care about the years of sacrifice, the blood, sweat, and tears I had put into this house. He didn't care about the family that had once existed here. I stood there, staring at the letter, my hands clenched into fists. I was insulted. This wasn't about money. This was about respect, about dignity. He thought he could buy me off, erase all the pain and betrayal with a check, but he couldn't. Not this time. I wasn't his fool anymore. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer again, my voice steady, but filled with determination. "Tell him I'm rejecting the offer," I said. "This isn't about money. This is about my life, my home, and I won't let him take it without a fight." The lawyer was silent for a moment, then he spoke, his voice firm. "I'll get to work on it right away, Mr. Jackson. We're in this together." I hung up the phone, the weight of my decision settling in. I had taken the first step. The battle was far from over, but I was no longer a passive participant. I was in control now, and I would fight with everything I had. I stood up, looking around the room one last time. This house wasn't just a building. It was my life. It was my history. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. I sat alone at the dining table, my hands resting on a stack of legal documents, each paper heavier than the last. The weight of the battle ahead felt like a storm cloud looming above me, and yet there was a strange calmness in the air. The silence in my house was deafening, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the only sound to break the stillness. I could see the old family photos on the wall. Faces frozen in time, smiling at moments that now felt so distant, so out of reach. I ran my fingers over the papers, carefully reading through them one last time. Tomorrow was the day. The first court date was set, and I was about to step into a legal battle that could take everything I had left. My home, my life, my dignity, it all rested on the decisions made tomorrow. The pressure weighed on me, but there was no turning back. I had been silent for far too long. My son had taken everything from me, my peace, my trust, and now he was coming for my home. But I wasn't going to let him take it without a fight. I wouldn't be his punching bag anymore. The anxiety gnawed at me, but there was a flicker of hope in the pit of my stomach. I had the law on my side. I had my lawyer. I had to believe that this fight, as painful as it was, would lead to something more than just a legal victory. It had to be a reclaiming of my life. The night stretched on as I gathered the last of my documents. I could feel the tension building in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't just a court date. This was the beginning of something bigger. This was me finally taking control of my own fate. The next morning came faster than I expected. My lawyer had warned me that the first court appearance would be tense, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold, sterile atmosphere of the courtroom. I walked in, my heart racing, feeling the eyes of strangers on me. I sat down across from my son, who seemed unnervingly calm, his lawyer at his side, exuding confidence. My son didn't even look at me. His lawyer wasted no time. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, his voice dripping with authority, "we question Mr. Jackson's ability to maintain the property and care for himself at his age. We believe he is no longer fit to manage his finances or his home." I felt the blood drain from my face. My son's lawyer didn't even try to hide his disdain. The words stung. They made me feel small, insignificant. But as I sat there, my anger began to bubble up. I wasn't just going to sit there and let them tear me down. The courtroom seemed to close in around me. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but I kept my eyes steady on my son, who still refused to meet my gaze. There was no love, no respect in his eyes, just cold, calculated indifference. I knew in that moment that this wasn't just about the house. It was about respect. It was about standing up for myself, for the man I had worked my whole life to become. I wasn't going to let him take that from me, not without a fight. As the hearing wrapped up, I left the courtroom feeling drained, but something had shifted. I wasn't the man who had sat in that airport, abandoned and broken. I wasn't the man who had been passive, waiting for someone to help him. I was a man who had been wronged, and I was ready to fight back. As I walked out of the courthouse, my thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. I turned to see an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years, walking towards me. His face lit up with a warm smile, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift from my shoulders. "Jack," he said, his voice full of warmth, "it's been too long." We stood there for a moment, catching up, but the conversation quickly turned to why I was there. I told him about the case, about the betrayal from my son, and his eyes narrowed in understanding. "You've always been a hard worker, Jack," he said. "I know you don't deserve this. I'll help you. If you need anything, connections, support, I've got your back." His words were like a lifeline thrown to me. It was the first time in weeks that I felt like I wasn't alone. There were still people who believed in me, who saw the worth in me. It gave me a renewed sense of strength. Maybe this fight wouldn't be as lonely as I had thought. But just as quickly as that moment of relief came, it was shattered by another letter. I had barely made it home when I opened it to find another message from my son, this time with a more aggressive tone. It was a demand to settle the case quietly, with a financial offer attached. "You know this is the best option for everyone," the letter read, as if it were nothing more than a business deal. My son was offering money in exchange for my signature, for me to give up my rights to the house. I could feel the anger rising in my chest again. How dare he? This wasn't just about money, it was about my dignity. He thought he could buy me off like I was some charity case. He had no idea how deeply his actions had cut me. This wasn't just a financial settlement, it was an insult. I put the letter down, my hands shaking with frustration. I had had enough. I was done playing his game. He wasn't going to buy me out, not now, not ever. I would fight for what was mine. The next day, I wrote the letter. I rejected his offer, every word laced with the finality of my decision. This wasn't just about the house. This was about my life, my legacy. I wasn't going to let my son erase that. I sealed the letter with a sense of finality. It was done. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back now. The weight of the decision was heavy, but I felt a quiet strength building within me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was taking control of my own future. The battle was far from over, but I was ready. I sat there, staring at the letter my son had sent, my hands shaking slightly. The words on the page blurred together as my anger flared up again. Another manipulative letter, another cold attempt to brush everything under the rug, as if what he was doing didn't matter. He had no understanding of the hurt he was causing, or maybe he just didn't care. The legal battle was becoming personal now, but I knew this wasn't just about property anymore. It was about my dignity. It was about me reclaiming everything he thought he could take from me. The weight of it all sat heavily on my chest, but there was a clarity in my mind. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. The past few months had been full of pain, but also of clarity. I had been given a second chance to stand up for myself, and I wouldn't back down now. My son wanted to take everything from me, to control me, to strip me of my legacy. But he was wrong if he thought I'd let him. I had come too far to turn back. This wasn't just about fighting for the house. It was about fighting for everything I'd worked for the man I'd been, and the man I still was. Later that day, I met with my attorney. We sat across from each other at a table littered with papers, legal jargon that I could barely understand. But the one thing that was clear was that my son had crossed a line. We talked through the details of the case, going over the legal options, but what my lawyer said next hit me like a punch to the gut. Your son? He's been trying to sell the house behind your back. We have proof. He's been meeting with real estate agents, making deals without your knowledge. I felt my heart drop to my stomach. I had suspected something was wrong, but hearing the confirmation was something else entirely. My son, my flesh, and blood had been plotting against me, trying to sell my home out from under me without my consent. He didn't just want money. He wanted control over my entire life. I couldn't process it at first. I had trusted him. I had sacrificed for him. All those years, all those moments, did they mean nothing? Was I just a means to an end for him? The betrayal stung deeper than I expected, but as the initial shock wore off, something else took its place. I was angry, yes, but I was also clear-headed. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was war. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my pride, my history, and my future. That night, I made a decision. I would confront him. I wouldn't let him hide behind legal documents and manipulation any longer. It was time to face the truth head-on, even if it hurt. The next day, I called my son. I told him I needed to see him. It wasn't a conversation I was looking forward to, but it was necessary. When he walked into the room, there was no warmth in his eyes, no apology, no remorse, just cold indifference. I didn't waste any time. I know what you've been doing, I said, my voice steady but firm. I know you've been trying to sell the house behind my back. You think I wouldn't find out? You think I wouldn't fight back? He shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't apologize. You're making this harder than it needs to be, old man, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Just let it go. You'll be better off if you just let me handle this. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to tell him everything I had been holding in for years. But instead, I stood tall, refusing to let him see how much his words hurt. No, I said firmly, I won't let you take what's mine. You're not getting away with this. His face twisted in frustration, but he didn't say anything else. I could see the anger building in his eyes, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. The son I once knew, the son I had raised, was gone. In his place was a man who thought he could control me, thought he could buy me out. But he was wrong. I didn't wait for him to leave. I didn't care about his threats or his empty promises. He could say whatever he wanted. I wasn't backing down. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control again. As I walked back to my office to sit with the documents, I received a call from my lawyer. There was new evidence. My son's financial records had been uncovered. He had been funneling money into secret accounts for years, money he had siphoned off, and now it was all coming to light. "You have everything you need now," my lawyer said. "This is it. We can take him down." For the first time since this nightmare started, I allowed myself a small, bitter smile. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a step in the right direction. With this evidence, the tables had turned. My son's manipulation was no longer just a matter of family drama. It was now a matter of criminal conduct, and I was going to make sure the courts knew it. I spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering everything I needed for the next hearing. There was no more hesitation. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about justice, about standing up for myself, for everything I had worked for. And this time, I wasn't alone. The evidence, my lawyer, and my own resolve were enough to carry me through. The next morning, I sealed the letter, rejecting my son's offer. It was time to move forward. I was no longer the man I had been, sitting quietly in the airport, abandoned and broken. I was the man ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I had the evidence. I had the support. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The courtroom felt different today. There was an intensity in the air, like everyone knew this was it, the end of it all. I could feel the weight pressing down on me as I walked through. Those doors, the sound of my shoes echoing against the cold, polished floors. Every step felt heavier than the last, but I held my head high. Today was the day. This was my moment. The judge called the room to order, and the silence that followed was deafening. There was no room for mistakes now. As I took my seat, I could feel my son's eyes on me. His calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside of me. My hands clenched into fists, but I kept them steady. This was a battle of will, not just of law. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for my dignity, for everything I had worked for, and I wasn't going to let him take that from me. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could see it on everyone's face. The court, my lawyer, my son's lawyer, they all knew this was the final act. My son was about to take the stand, and for the first time, I felt like I was the one holding all the cards. He might have thought he could play me, manipulate me into silence, but I was done. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. Then, unexpectedly, he stood. My son, the one who had betrayed me more than once, stepped up to the witness stand. For a moment, I expected him to be as cold and calculating as he had been when we last spoke. But he wasn't. His voice wavered slightly as he spoke, and I could see the tremble in his hands. I never meant for it to go this far," he said, his words stilted and hesitant. I'm sorry for everything. I just wanted what was best for the both of us." I stared at him, barely recognizing the man in front of me. The son I had raised was gone. This was someone else, someone desperate. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, that wanted to believe his apology was genuine. But that part of me was drowned out by the overwhelming flood of betrayal. His eyes darted nervously toward the judge, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of fear. But it wasn't the kind of fear that made me want to forgive him. It was the fear of losing everything he had fought, for a selfish, self-preserving kind of fear. And in that moment, I realized something. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done to me. He was sorry because it wasn't working. His breakdown was nothing but an act, a last-ditch effort to sway the judge. I could see through it, and it made me even more disgusted than I had been before. The man I thought I knew was a stranger to me now. I stood up, my heart pounding as I felt the anger bubbling to the surface. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "Enough," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You're not sorry. You're scared. Scared of losing everything. Scared of being exposed. But let me tell you something. I've spent my entire life working for what I have. I built this family. I built this life, and I'll be damned if I let you destroy it." The room went still, the tension building. My words hung in the air, sharp and firm. For the first time, I felt like I was in control. My son might have thought he could play me, that I was just some old man who didn't understand the game. But I understood it better than he could ever imagine. Just as my son's lawyer began to object, my attorney stood. holding a thick folder in his hand. He slid it across the table and onto the judge's desk, the sound of the folder hitting the wood like a hammer striking an anvil. "Your Honor, I believe this is something you should see," my lawyer said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. The judge glanced at the folder before flipping it open. The room grew even quieter as he scanned the documents inside. The records detailed years of embezzlement, money funneled into secret accounts, money my son had taken from the family business to fund his lavish lifestyle. It was everything we needed. The evidence was irrefutable. For a moment, everything was still. My son's face turned white, and I saw his hands tremble. The judge glanced up from the papers, his expression unreadable. It was a victory, but it felt bitter. The damage had already been done. My son had taken everything from me, my trust, my love, my family, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. I didn't feel joy in the moment. What good was winning when it meant losing a part of my soul? But I couldn't ignore the sense of vindication that washed over me. This was the justice I had been fighting for, and I was going to get it. The final moments of the trial were intense. My son tried one last time to plead for a settlement, but his words were full of contradictions. His arguments were weak, full of lies and half-truths. I could barely stand to hear him speak. But I listened, and when he finished, I stood up, my voice cutting through the lies. "I'm done with this," I said, my voice calm but full of authority. "You don't get to decide what happens to me. I'm not some pawn for you to move around. This isn't just about the house. It's about my life, my legacy. You've taken everything from me, but you won't take this." The courtroom fell silent. The air was thick with tension as I made my closing statement. My words were not filled with anger, but with a quiet, fierce determination. This was not just about a house. It was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about standing up for everything I had lost and for the future I still had left. The gavel came down with a resounding thud, and the room went silent. The trial was over. The verdict was imminent. I stood there, my heart pounding as I waited. My future hung in the balance, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The courtroom was heavy with tension as I sat in the hard chair, the silence almost unbearable. Every person in that room seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for the final judgment. My heart pounded in my chest, but somehow I found a strange calmness. This wasn't just a fight for a house, it was a fight for my dignity, for the respect I knew I deserved. I had been pushed to the edge, but I wasn't backing down. I watched the judge as he reviewed the papers in front of him, the sound of his pen scratching across the documents, marking the moments of my life that had led to this. The gavel had not yet fallen, but I could feel its weight. Today was the day. I had fought for this. I was ready for whatever came next. The courtroom seemed frozen in time, and I couldn't help but think of everything I had lost. The betrayal from my own flesh and blood. The years of hard work, now reduced to a battle for what was mine. The fight had been long and painful, but the end was in sight. As the judge looked up from his papers, I took a deep breath, waiting for him to speak. Then, the unexpected happened. The judge called for a short recess. I stood up, stretching my legs, trying to shake off the lingering tension in my body. As I walked out of the courtroom, I expected to be alone, but I was surprised when I saw my son standing there. He was waiting for me, his face a mix of uncertainty and something else, guilt, maybe. He approached me cautiously. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the fear of what was about to happen. He spoke first, his voice lower than usual. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I know I've messed up. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I didn't know how to respond." Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to hear the apology I had waited so long for, but part of me knew it was too little, too late. "Sorry?" I repeated, the word feeling foreign coming from him. "You're sorry now, when it's all about to come crashing down?" He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I've been haunted by what I did. I don't know how I got here. I wish I could go back, fix everything, but I can't. I'm sorry." The words hit me harder than I expected. My anger didn't dissipate, but the pain of it, well, it still stung. "You can't go back," I said quietly. "You've done things that can't be undone. You've made choices that hurt this family. But I won't pretend like I'm okay with any of this." He dropped his head, looking away for a moment. There was nothing more to say. No more empty words would fix this. "I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. I don't want to lose you, Dad." I looked at him for a long moment. Could I forgive him? Could I move past this betrayal? I didn't know. I couldn't say yes or no. But I could feel the weight of the years between us, the years of silence, now stretching out before me like a chasm that couldn't easily be crossed. Before I could speak again, the recess ended, and we were called back into the courtroom. My son lingered behind me for a moment, his presence heavy in the air. When we returned to our seats, my body was tense, my mind racing, but there was no turning back now. The judge took his seat again, and the room grew still. He cleared his throat before speaking, each word precise, measured. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began, and considering both parties' arguments, the court rules in favor of the defendant, Mr. Jackson. The house is to remain in his name, and the claims against him are dismissed. For a moment, I didn't move. The weight of the words hung in the air, but I felt a flood of relief wash over me. The battle was over. The house was mine. The fight was won. But as I sat there, hearing the finality in the judge's words, a part of me couldn't escape the bittersweet feeling that followed. Yes, I had won this battle. But at what cost? The man I had once called my son, the person I thought would be by my side through it all, had broken something between us that couldn't be fixed with a ruling. I nodded, barely, registering the applause from my supporters. This wasn't a victory that felt triumphant. It was simply a moment of justice, long overdue. Later that day, I took a walk through the park, needing to clear my head. My mind was full of thoughts, of what had happened, of what could still be. As I sat on a bench, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my son. We sat together, both of us silent for a while. The park was quieter now, the weight of the trial lifting from the air. After a long pause, I spoke, my voice softer than I expected. "I don't know what to say to you." He looked at me, his face filled with a mix of regret and hope. "I don't know what to say either. I know I've lost a lot, but I'm still here. I want to try, Dad. I want to rebuild what we had." I nodded, the sadness lingering in my chest. "Rebuilding isn't something that happens overnight," I said quietly. "It's going to take time, a lot of time." "I know," he replied, looking down at his hands. "But I'm willing to try. I want to be better. For you, for us." We sat in silence for a while longer, both of us, thinking about the road ahead. It wasn't going to be easy, not by a long shot. But there was something in this moment, a flicker of hope, a glimmer that maybe we could start again. I stood up, the weight of the past finally feeling like it was starting to lift. Looking up at the sky, I said, "This is just the beginning, son. We've got a long way to go, but we'll get there. Together, maybe." We walked side by side, the tension between us still there, but something had shifted. We weren't there yet, but we were closer than we had been before. The park was calm, the air cool as the sun began to dip below the horizon. My son and I sat on a bench, side by side, the quiet of the evening settling around us like a blanket. We had just come from the courtroom, where the long battle I'd fought was finally over. But this, right here, was where the real work began. The fight for the house was done, but our relationship, the thing that had been broken and strained for so many years, still hung in the balance. I felt relief, sure, but I also felt sadness. A lot of it. The past few months had been a storm of emotions. But now, here in the park, there was nothing but the stillness. A strange mix of peace and uncertainty. We'd come this far, but the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. My son shifted beside me, and I could tell he wanted to say something. I didn't look at him right away, but I knew this moment was important. What came next would define us. There was no turning back. "Dad," he started, his voice tight, hesitant. I'm sorry." I turned to face him, surprised by the weight in his words. His face was filled with something I hadn't seen in years: guilt, regret, the kind of raw emotion that made my chest ache. He wasn't just apologizing for the trial, he was apologizing for everything. "I've been carrying this guilt around for so long," he continued, looking at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. "All the hurt I caused, the things I said, the way I treated you. You didn't deserve any of it. I've been so lost in my own mess, I couldn't see what I was doing to you. It wasn't what I'd expected, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My mind raced, thoughts colliding in a whirlwind. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words got stuck in my throat." He had finally said what I'd longed to hear, but at the same time, it didn't feel like enough. "You're right," I said, my voice rough. "You hurt me, son. You hurt me in ways that can't just be fixed with a few words." His eyes were filled with tears now, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. He wasn't just sorry for what he'd done recently. He was sorry for the years of neglect, the betrayal that ran deeper than just money or property. "No," he whispered. "I know it's not enough. I can't change the past, but I want to make it right. I want to fix what's broken, even if it takes a lifetime." There was a long silence between us. The kind of silence that could have been filled with years of missed conversations. I felt it, that ache in my chest, the longing for the relationship we once had. But that was gone, and I couldn't ignore the fact that what we had now was fragile, uncertain. Finally, I took a breath and spoke again. "I don't know what's going to happen between us. I can't pretend like everything's fine just because you're sorry now, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild something. But it won't be easy." He nodded, a small sense of relief washing over him, but I could see the sorrow still hanging there. There was a long road ahead for both of us, but in that moment, something shifted. I didn't have all the answers. Hell, I didn't know if we'd ever get back to where we once were. But I was willing to take the first step. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I need you to know, I'm trying. I'm trying to be the man you raised me to be." I gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We'll see. It's going to take time, but I'll be here." We sat there for a while, the sun now low in the sky, casting long shadows over the park. The world around us seemed still, as if everything had stopped to let us have this moment. The fight for the house was over, but the real fight, the one that would take years, had just begun. After a long pause, I stood up. I looked at my son, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we might be able to move forward, even if it was just a small step. "Let's go," I said, my voice firm, but soft. He stood up beside me, and together, we started walking. The tension between us now, a little lighter. There was still a lot to underfar, be healed. But for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could start again. The past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to define us anymore. As we walked, I turned to him and said, "It's not the end, son, but it's a damn good start." And with that, we kept walking, side by side, not knowing what the future would hold, but ready to face it together.